Hey guys, Mike here from Sell Your Service, and I'm with Amy Woods from Content 10X. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for asking. I can't believe it's June, but it's when we're recording and it's miserable as sin
It's
weather-wise.
yeah, it's not exactly summertime, is it?
Right? It's like second winter. So
It's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah, it's rancid. So anyway, we
Mm.
met at Agency Transformation Live
Hmm.
and content repurposing. It was on they have the run sheet, and I was like, I want to check that out. And it's one of those subjects where I was like, I'm pretty sure I know most of this stuff,
Mm.
but you put it into essentially a format and a process, and we've spoken since about that kind of that timeline.
Mm.
And the thing that came up a time and time again was essentially promotion, not necessarily about creation.
Yeah,
Is that right? People tend not to promote as much as create.
I think it's so the way I see it is that you put all this time and effort into one piece of content, and then I guess content repurposing can be promotion as well. So it's a subset of, but it's just accepting that content, when you create content, you are communicating a message that you have to communicate in a particular format,
Mhm.
and then you put that in a particular location. So the benefit of repurposing is that you've put all that effort into forming your thoughts and your ideas and everything to package it into that format and that place. But what about people that don't consume content in that format and don't hang out in that
Yeah,
place?
yeah.
And it's partly it's about just reaching more people with your message, so reaching people on all the different platforms, etc.
Yeah.
And then it's also about so you could be promoting the podcast, promoting the YouTube channel, or actually maybe they're never going to listen to the podcast and they're never going to watch the YouTube video, but they're going
Hmm.
to love the blog post, or they just love the social content you put out, and that's enough for them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I see it as a bit of a mixture of promoting the core content, or at least reaching, getting that message to people in a different way, in a different format entirely.
Yeah, and it's
Mm.
funny actually because when you kind of talked about that, I was like, actually, that's a big part of my talk that I then gave was you don't scale products or businesses, you scale a message. And
Exactly.
you've got like this, which I love, by the way. You give these out, you've
I
got them
did.
available.
Yeah, I've got loads
I
of them.
absolutely love this, right? So it's like a
Thank
little
you.
comic book, right? The Content 10X Men, and I absolutely love this, and it goes through this process. And you're absolutely right that, and again, it sounds so obvious when you kind of talk about it. If you shoot a video, great, but people are only gonna watch it when they like to watch video. And if
Mm.
people are driving, they're gonna want to listen to, a podcast or running or whatever. And then you've got, reading it. But then you went into all these other types, and I was like, slow down, like hurriedly trying to write down all the different types, just at a high level overview. Let's say we start, because you said starting with a video is a pretty strong place to start. Is that right?
Yeah. I
Where would
always
I go from there?
So, like, I always think if people say to me, what is the best core content to start with and then repurpose, I always think that the best is actually live video if you're up for doing live video, because you have that video content, and come on to that in just a second, but there's so much you can do from video content. But then with the live aspect of it as well, you are offering that experience. So, lives aren't so much content as an experience as well. So if you start with live, and you may not be, confident with doing that, and that's fine. But if you start with live video, you offer interaction and experience, access to you and all of that, and community building. You build your community, build your tribe, whatever you want to call it. But so you offer that, and then you have all of that video content. And if you do a live video in such a way that you are thinking that you are going to go on and repurpose, so you have live interaction, a bit of banter at the start, whatever you want to do, and then you have maybe a bit more at the end. If you think about, but then there's going to be a section where I'll really kind of present the topic that I want people to learn about, and
Mm.
you let people know, okay, for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm not going to respond to comments and questions. I'm going to focus on what I'm teaching you, telling you. And then at the end, I'll come to all the questions and we'll get back to answering them. Then that segment where you're more presenting becomes a bit more like pre-recorded video, because you lose that back and forward.
Mm.
And we always think that when we work with clients who do that, that's the bit that we actually take on and then repurpose into, for example, a podcast episode. So that's the golden nuggets that people on listening to a repurposed Facebook Live into a podcast aren't going to want to hear. you know, things that don't interest them when they're not there seeing it live. You want to keep them, don't you? So the way I see it is you can take the golden nuggets from, say, the audio of a live, and if you didn't go live, you pre-recorded video, and you can turn that into that audio content, and then you can turn audio content into audiograms and things like that. But then with video content, you can create lots of little video teasers as well that you can share on all the platforms. And as I mentioned actually just a minute ago, if you do a Facebook Live where we have some Q&As as well, if you repeat back the question and answer it, even just taking all those little questions and answers, they can go out on social, you know, tweet that out, Instagram, Insta stories, or if you have memberships and things like that, put some of those questions in your member Q&As and things like that. So you can take lots of little bits of video segments. That's why I love video, because you get audio from video, you get different types of video from a main video, but then I just think it's very important to think about getting this into the written word as well, so we can start getting some, you know, helping with your SEO. If you can start thinking about some of the keywords and writing out articles and all that kind of content as well. And this is when you can start thinking about where you're going to put it on your site, what social media platforms. So it's the format, I mentioned it at the start, but the format and the location as well. So that's, you know, in the utopia for me, start with live, but your live does have a pretty solid content section as well. And then you can repurpose thereafter.
It's interesting that, because to me, I think a lot of people talk about video and live video, and they kind of say, oh, well, you know, I'm not sure that I want to get into it. And it was only the other day I was thinking, never before in human history have I been able to shoot something in 4K for this. My phone a couple of years ago, whatever, cost maybe $1,000 at the time. I got the top. That's, you know, pretty good. Broadcast it to unlimited amount of people for free, repurpose it relatively cheaply compared to how it used to have to be done, and then push that out. And then that content stays there forever, constantly promoting you and positioning you as an expert for the sake of a tripod and maybe a mic, then that the audio on them is getting better all the time. It's just insane to me that businesses don't take on, want to get involved with this.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said is really important as well. It's important to think about the longevity and making sure that you have the mix of social and being able to be found by search as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, social is more in the moment, isn't it? And there's certain, you know, I don't know off the top of my head, but the life of a Facebook, the life a tweet's 20 minutes or something, isn't it? Instagram's a day or something like that. So, you know, social's a bit more in the moment and everything. So I always think you need to incorporate the efforts that you put into content into social, but then also search, because there's the longevity there of, as long as it's things that people want to find out about, and you are making sure you're going to get found by search as well, then you're going to have both aspects. And remembering that when you put content and you're working within social media, when it comes to your audience, you know an awful lot about them, but you don't know a lot about what they're thinking. And then in search, you know exactly what they're thinking, but you don't really know much about them. So you need to mix both of that up, basically.
We're frankly following a lot of your stuff on your website, and I listen to your podcast.
Cool.
Your podcast?
It's just the Content 10X podcast.
All right, the content. So I've checked that, and there's a few on there. It's stuff like turning videos into posts, a couple on like courses and taking content out of them and turning that. And I was like, what? Because we do a weekly coaching call. We've got 2 full flagship courses and a bunch of mini courses. And I'm like, this is the product. Why aren't I pushing out smaller versions of this instead of creating new content for the sake of it? Why don't we look at what we've got? And I think a lot of the time when people do sort of audit, for lack of a better term, themselves, they see that they actually have got a huge amount of content kind of ready to go, right?
Yeah, so in the example of when you have private memberships and things like that. So I'm speaking at the Retain event in November, the membership guys, Mike and Kelly.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's what I'm going to be talking about basically, well, an aspect of it. But say you have that content that you're creating for a paid membership.
Mm.
Really, what is better than to market that and to draw people in than sharing showing people the inside by repurposing some of the member videos, the Q&As,
Yeah.
things like that, because if you like a bit of it, you're going to like the rest of it, but that's
Yeah.
behind the paywall. So, and yeah, like instead of creating lots of fresh content, just look at what you've got. Yeah, exactly. Be smart.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, because I tell my guy, with any of my consulting clients or even, the membership clients, I'm like, you should be emailing your guys once a day,
Mm,
produce at least one piece of content per week, like bare minimum. If you
mm,
don't want to play the game, that's fine, but those are the rules. That's the absolute minimum.
mm,
And I'm often asked, Mike, yeah, but you do 3 videos a week, plus a podcast, plus a blog post, plus an email every day. Part of that, I think, is because my product's very scalable, so I don't
mm,
deliver it. But also, I'm like, yeah, but I don't know of a cheaper way or even like a more free way to be able to reach 10, 15,000
mm.
people at a time. Like, if you can
Yeah,
tell me that, go
yeah,
for it. It's all there
exactly.
ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, what's out there for us is for the taking. And if you
Yeah.
don't do it, your competitors will. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna say, I'm not gonna do that, okay, well that's fine, but just watch as other people do and watch how people start to connect and
Mm.
engage with the people that you wish you were connecting and engaging with. So yeah, I think for people who are hesitant, like you mentioned, people who are saying maybe they don't have the time and things like that. I do totally get that. And when I often speak to people about this, sometimes go onto someone's podcast like yourself, and I can almost see the person I'm talking to starting to hyperventilate when I say, well,
Yeah.
if you do this, then you do that, then you turn it into this, and and it sounds like I know I should do all this, so I really should do it, but it's time consuming.
Uh-huh.
And I think it really is. So I think, there's a couple of things you have to look at. If you've got budget, then you can get budget to get some help, and then
Mhm.
you just have to put in the right systems and get the help to follow the systems that you want them to follow, or just at least take it one step at a time. Just start looking at your own processes and what one thing could you do, and
Mm.
then just like you said, like an email. So if you aren't emailing weekly but you are blogging weekly, then why are you not just at least turning that blog into an email?
Yep.
Because why would you think that the people who get your email do read your blog avidly every week? They don't,
Yeah.
because we're busy. And even if they do, they're not going to be offended if you send an email just
Yeah.
saying the same message. It's not offensive. So, and I think actually the objections that I sometimes get, and you don't get really objections to content repurposing, but someone once said to me, but are you not just bombarding people with the same message
I get
and,
this.
annoying people? It's like, well, it's valuable value.
Mm-hmm.
It's helpful. You can't assume that everybody is seeing, at the same
Mm-hmm.
place, reading the same things every time. And it's not offensive. If you were emailing someone 10 times a day or whatever, but it's not offensive.
Mm.
It's valuable quality, and I always say that you don't copy and paste with content repurposing. Now that if
Yeah.
you were just copying and pasting, of course that would be noticeable to people. You have to repackage. You think about the format. You think about the why. So a person on YouTube is there for a different reason than a
Mm.
person on Facebook. Respect that and think about how you can do things a little bit different for that platform versus that. And
Mm.
then you're fine. You're just creating platform specific content with valuable messages within it. So
It's also
mm,
the best way to become known for something. Everyone
mm,
wants to build like a brand. The word brand gets thrown around kind of all the
mm,
time. Like, if you genuinely want to do that, don't worry about advertising. Just talk about, if you want to be known for the guy who fixes 1960s red Ferraris to showroom condition, all you should talk about is
mm,
restoring 1960s red Ferraris to showroom condition. And the weird thing is, if I like that, if I've got a 1960s Ferrari and I'm interested in that, I want that content. I want
yeah.
it multiple times a day. I want to see it in different formats, or I want to certainly get it at least in the format that I am going to regularly kind of tune into. It's not bombarding people, like you say. If it's valuable, I mean,
Mm.
are you planning on sending spam?
Yeah, exactly.
You
If
know?
you are, then. Mm,
Right. Um, so it's really interesting that you kind of, yeah, that frequency side, because I personally, even then, I don't really agree that frequency is the problem, because we check Facebook and Twitter so many times. I don't think
mm,
frequency of consumption is our problem. I think a lot of the time is someone just trying to sell to me.
mm.
But even then, like, my top performing emails are still my sales emails,
Yeah.
because it's useful stuff and people want help.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to feel sold to, but at the same time, when we are running businesses, we have to be seen to sell as
Yeah.
well, don't we? Obviously, that you know about this more than me, but you have to be seen to sell. So we are giving valuable information for free to people. We're showing our expertise.
Yeah.
We do want to help people, but of course to a limit, because we're running a business just like you are, just like everyone else is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's fine, but you just adapt to what works on what platform, and fit in with that. Mm.
Just so I want to, because we went for dinner, not just you and me, but like with a group of people, and kind of we were chatting away. Your background before you were doing Content 10x is fascinating. Like the steps you went to. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because it was kind of a big shift, if I remember.
Yeah, so basically, I was a management consultant for 13 years or so.
Mm,
So I worked well, my specialism was change management. I worked it with mergers and acquisitions in the banking industry mainly, and I
yeah.
did some interesting work with Microsoft and some government organisations, but big programs, multi $500 million programs, that kind of thing, huge tech transformations in organizations and things like that.
Mm,
And so I was, far from, I suppose, this small business space in terms of, budget and spend, and very large team. And by the time I left, I was in the senior leadership team within the banking part of Accenture, who I work for. But yeah, so massive, massive change. But the funny thing is that a lot of the skills that I learned during that career are transferable to what I do now, in terms of setting up systems, setting up processes, leadership, managing teams, just responding quickly. You have to respond quickly in that kind of environment. You have to respond quickly in what we do as well. But
mm,
yeah, very, very different. I was on a big corporate hamster wheel, really,
yeah.
just like, working. But it was funny. I was healthy my whole career until a certain point where I got a bit ill and had to have some time off work, multiple kind of operations over the course of a year. But that was what got me off the hamster wheel. So when I
Yeah.
was recovering and when I was getting better, I discovered podcasts. I discovered,
Yeah.
content, blog posts, things like that. I started doing e-learning courses. I basically just completely retrained myself whilst I was it's supposed to be recovering.
Yeah. Supposed to be
Yeah,
recovering. You're like, I
yeah.
know what I'll do.
I started a business
Yeah.
basically.
That is the best way to recover from an
Yeah,
illness.
exactly. It
Yeah.
proved to be the best way to
How
recover.
funny.
Yeah. So actually, it was a blessing, and it was a blessing and a curse, but really it was a blessing, because I don't think I'd be doing, but I'd still be probably telling everyone that I want to leave one day and start my own business, but not doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas I
Big one.
actually did it. Yeah. So it when I first started on that career, it was always supposed to be a kind of 2-year type thing. Just 2 years became 3, became 4, and so on.
So
So
yeah, how long has Content 10x been going then?
I had my 2-year birthday in May.
It's
So
2 years old.
just over 2 years old. Yeah.
Because the site does not look. It looks like a business that's been around in a good way.
Yeah.
It looks like a business that's much more mature than that.
Yeah. We
Um, and you've got so many. Like, I think the amount of podcasts that you have got alone as well adds to that.
Yeah, well, I started podcasting when a few months after I first got going, because obviously to practice what I preach, I needed
Yeah.
regular, consistent content, and then we, kind of repurposed all our podcasts and still do. So I had to practice what I preach. So we have created a lot of content, but yeah, it's been amazing, and been really pleased with how the business has grown from literally just me as a one person doing everything like we all start, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and then just gradually growing the team, growing the clients in parallel with each other and everything. So yeah, May 2017 I brought on my first client.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a because I went through it obviously kind of before the call, but also a few other pieces and just seeing like what gets put out, and that's surprising that you've only been going for 2. That's awesome, and you do a lot of talking as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of been a thing that's happened in the last kind of 12 months or so, where I've started to talk really just to, raise awareness of who I am. It's personal branding activities, really raise awareness of who I am, what we do, and try and position myself as a leader in the world of content repurposing, basically.
And it's a bit meta, because the way that you are known through content repurposing is by repurposing your content and promoting. But again, it's probably the fastest way I know to build yourself into becoming a number one position in any kind of role, especially if you create that area, is, wouldn't you know it, just talk about it over and over again. Like you said at the start, it's about spreading your message as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, staying focused, like the example that you provided before, stay focused. Like, when I started my podcast, I very much wanted it to be about content repurposing, and every single episode is about some aspect of content repurposing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start going off into other worlds of content marketing, because that's not what I'm about. And there's enough of that. It has to be about content repurposing. I would only talk on stages about content repurposing. It's what I want. I've got a book coming out in the summer. It's, would you believe, about content repurposing.
Yeah, shocking, right?
Yeah, shocking. Because you have to be known. And where we met at Agency Transformation Live, and Chris Ducker was talking at the end of that. Chris has been a big help, like a mentor of mine. I put my idea for my business to him in a mastermind a few months before I started it, when I just went and it was an idea, and I kind of spoke to him and 6 other people, and everyone in the room said, well, everyone had a podcast. They were like, I'd buy it, I'd do it. So that was the confirmation that I needed. And then I've stayed quite close to Chris over the last couple of years with guidance and mentor. And he, with the whole youpreneur thing, he teaches how to get known for something. So I guess I've kind of been following a lot of his guidance. He will tell everyone, have a book, talk on stages, have products and services, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do, basically.
Yeah, and it's because Chris was obviously at the event, and I've read the Rise of the.
Oh yeah.
It is very much about that personal brand, and again, I think digital marketers, or marketers in the broader sense, they really value novelty. And I think they want to try to be known for everything. So when they want to talk about landing pages and squeeze pages and podcasts, and like you said, content marketing, and actually when you go down, you're in content marketing, and then even further, just into repurposing.
Yeah.
Initially, you're like, that seems quite small. But I find sales training just for marketing services, my list of topics that I want to cover is now deeper than if I was going too broad. That one thing and going deep into it.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the only way that people are going to become really attracted to you as the person that can help them, isn't it? I always say, when I speak to people about this, of going specific with something, if I don't know, like let's say you had like a pinching pain in your left shoulder and you needed an operation, and there was a general surgeon, and you thought, okay, he can help me. And then there was this surgeon that specialised in pinching pains in your left shoulder. Then who would you go with, the general one or the one that specialises in that? And that's what you want to be, isn't it? People, ultimately, we do this. We do run businesses, and people are going to go with the person they think most helps them, and that's how you do it.
And again, repurposing. It's very difficult to negotiate or argue against someone who says, okay, well, I want to talk about, again, we'll take you as content repurposing. I've got a podcast, I've got a blog, we've got videos, I've got a book. When I'm interviewed, I talk about it. And when I speak, I talk about it. It's very like you are then obviously the authority in that area. And I'm like, it's actually the repetition of the message that really counts. And that's why I think repurposing works so much, because you're just repeating that message through different media.
Yeah, it shows a depth of knowledge because you're able to communicate it. It shows that depth of that knowledge. You can communicate in different ways. And what's that? The sales saying is that you have to hear messages more than 7 times or something. For it to,
7, 8 times.
Yeah, exactly. So it reinforces that as well. But I think content repurposing keeps you on track with your message, doesn't it? If you think, right, I'm going to repurpose, it keeps you on track and stops you from deviating as well. If you have a robust structure of repurposing your content, then it should keep you on track. Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because obviously Content 10x does do repurposing, right? People, you can, we've had a conversation where we just hand over work and it gets put into different formats. If I wanted to get started and I think, okay, well, I am producing some kind of content regularly, I think people, they define what they're comfortable with. Where do I start? If I'm looking at the stuff that I produce at least regularly, where do I want to go with that? You mentioned live video earlier. Where do I want to go on from there?
Yeah, I think that you want to, well, I think firstly, it's really important to think about, just know where your audience are, to know where you want to put content. So work that out, work out what you want your core content to be. And core, I mean like the longer form content. So not that your core content is Facebook posts or Instagram or something, but more, is it writing blog posts or articles? Is it videos? In my long form, I just mean even just 5 to 10 minute videos. So is it videos? Is it podcasts? Is it audio content? Is it written? They're the main ones, or live. So what is your core content? And just start by thinking, okay, that's the thing that I need to be consistent with. So you have to choose something that you can be consistent with, because consistency is everything. So decide what will be the long form content, and then you want to work out your schedule and be realistic with your time as well. So what are you going to repurpose that into? So let's say that you've decided that you want to reach people on Instagram and Facebook, and you would like to have a podcast, but your core content is going to be creating a video. And your flow, you need to work out your flow of, you're going to do your video and then you're going to turn that into audio content and create a podcast. I want to reach people on Facebook and Instagram, so I'll take some teaser videos from the main video and get that onto those platforms, and maybe I'll do some visual content as well, so some title images and maybe some quote images. So work out what can work for you, and again, consistency is key. So if you've decided, right, this is going to be a great bunch of content to go onto Facebook, this will be great to go on Instagram, work out how much time it's going to take, and that might help inform your frequency then. Because if you're going to go weekly and then you look at how much you're going to do afterwards, if you're not going to manage that weekly, maybe you should go live every 2 weeks, because it's better to do that repurposing work than just keep putting content out there but not repurposing it and only hitting people who happen to consume video content on Facebook on that day, and that's it. Well, that's not a great strategy. Instead, do it every 2 weeks and have that time to repurpose. So what works for you? What time commitment do you have? Let that work out, that dictate the regularity, be consistent, and then just draw up your processes of what are you going to do, and keep it in a consistent process. Work out if you need to bring in some help. And I guess a key thing I say is spread the learning style, like the content. Have some written content, have video content, have visual content, and if you can, have audio content. So just try and mix it up. Like, don't go all in on video, have that written content, don't go all in visuals, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, it's funny that, because that's actually the way you break it down is pretty simplistic. When you've got your core content, we'll then think, all right, well, where's the audience?
Yeah.
Where our audiences are on those social channels, they want loads of different type of content anyway. We found that converting quotes from the blog into Instagram posts and putting them out, great. It's relatively simple. Our VA does it. Like it's a nice simple process. But again, it looks like we're this team of people who are just consistent about a message and pushing a message out. But we're then beginning to capture a lot more people that otherwise wouldn't have known we were out there.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it all immediately after, and you don't have to only look at repurposing your current content. If it's evergreen messages, it's not all about the week you went live with the podcast or video. That quote, that teaser, that little tip, that nugget is going to be just as valuable to someone in a month, 2 months, or a year from now. And similarly, the content you've done in the past, it's really useful to go back and look at some of your top performing videos, top performing podcasts. I always say, you're going to look at what to repurpose from your older content. the statistics and data that you can get hold of can show you what people love the most.
Yep.
So go all in on repurposing the top performing podcast episodes or videos or blog posts from your Google Analytics. Go all in on repurposing them, because that's clearly what your audience love. So they're going to love to hear that message broken down in different ways on different platforms. So use data to help you choose from the past, and have processes to help you repurpose moving with the current content that you have.
Yeah, no, awesome. That's really good. What about, so something that helped me when I was like doing it when I started was batching it as well, and giving myself and saying, well, I'm actually going to do what I can't even remember what I did. I was like, I'm going to do all of our transcripts like in this half a day. That works. It doesn't work. The batch idea of doing a bit of project management.
I think it's a brilliant idea to do batching of content. Yeah, I think it's such a good thing to do. I mean, because we work with our clients, so when they batch to us, it's like a dream, because like we don't have to chase them every week and say, hey, you've got a podcast due today. We just can work through the batches. And so I think I certainly see that people feel more in control of their content and less stressed, because if you do commit to a schedule but you batch in advance, you're not worried or stressed or anything, and you can kind of hit the consistency. And it means that you can create all the core content on one day, and then you can always then batch visual content, batch video content, and stay more in the flow of the work that you're doing. So you're going to get more done in this short space of time if you stay in flow as well. So yeah, I really recommend it. You can't obviously really do that with live video because you're going live, but any other forms of content, I personally always try and batch. I can never really do one episode on its own. I'll at least do 2, if not 3 or 4. So highly recommend it. Yeah, it's such a good way to work.
It's also helped us get really clear on, so basically the first Tuesday of the month is when we record all my videos. That means our editor essentially has a month before they need to be put out. Great. That means that I can get all of the YouTube keywords and descriptions done. Other people can take care of the uploads. As opposed to publishing once a week and or 3 times a week and trying to do the video on the day, which is so stressful. You're kind of in that zone and you're pushing it out and you think, all right, well, that's done now. I can move on to the next task, as opposed to, because technically you only then shoot 1 video a month, if that makes sense, as opposed to 5 or 6 or whatever.
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? It's such a good way to work. There's a few people we work with who do really quite polished videos, and they hire a videographer to come and work with them. So of course they only really want to use that person for half a day or something. So then they're really on it with, like, I've got my video coming tomorrow and I'm going to do 6 in one morning, because I'm paying him 4 hours or something. So things like that as well, I think work really, really well. But yeah, I just think that every task that you do, when you're batching those tasks, you're more focused and you're not thinking of you're not task switching, are you? And you're not worried about missing deadlines and things like that. So it works really well.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking me through that. I say this every episode. The reason I like doing this is because I get free consultation. How can people find you? How can they reach out to you? Where's all your stuff at?
Yeah, so basically, I guess all my stuff really is on my website, content10x.com. All the links to my social profiles and everything. But basically, I'm just at content10x on everything. So yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And yeah, the podcast as well, obviously we'll put links to everything down below. I know it's also worth noting as well, your repurposing prices are way more affordable. When we were talking about that, they're way more affordable than I kind of was expecting. So people should definitely go ahead and check that out, because again, it's not paying for Amy's team time. It's kind of paying for your time, because I know what it's like to go through transcribes and transcriptions and edit stuff or whatever it is, content10x.com as a service is outstanding. And I love the kind of the pop kind of
cartoony superhero-y type thing we've got going on.
And it's worth yours, because I think a lot of the time, sorry, going off tangent, the yours is about a home brewer, right? I think it's really easy as content marketers or as digital marketers to assume that every other service is a marketing service. And you prove in this book, actually, whatever it is that you do, a home brewer can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe, whatever it is that I create or whatever my clients create could absolutely be used as this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I went for something completely different, because to prove that point as well. Yeah. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
it's a really good example. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, and we'll have to catch up soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Bye now.
See ya.